Today I'd like to talk about the 5 differences between buying in New York City and buying basically anywhere else in the country. Let's go. Number 1, we don't have standard contracts in New York City. We have bespoke contracts that are negotiated between 2 attorneys. So it's unfortunately not like most places in the country where you have very standard contracts where your real estate agent will fill out certain forms in the contract. Our contracts are drafted by the seller's attorney to begin with, and then if you didn't have an attorney, you would just be signing whatever the seller's attorney decided to put in front of you, which is not usually a very good strategy. So we always recommend that buyers have their own attorney. Number 2, contract deposits are larger. So we typically look for a 10% deposit at contract signing. In other areas of the country, I've seen deposits as low as 1%, 3% being pretty common, and 5% being pretty common. But 10% is quite a bit. It also means that usually an offer with less than 10% down payment will not be seen as very competitive, because you're still going to have to put 10% down in order to match the competitiveness of other offers. Now, you're not required to put 10% down. There's no law saying 10%. That's just the custom here, and that's the typical amount that the seller will expect. So it's something to keep in mind. Number 3, the time period to closing. So in New York, for a variety of reasons, our typical timeline for closing is 90 days from an accepted offer. Now, that is usually because the buildings that you're buying into are going to have their own organization that you have to get approved by in order to proceed with your purchase. This 90 days is assuming that you're looking for financing. So if it's a co-op or a condo, you typically have to put together what's called a board package or board application, which is a topic for another video, but it's a whole bunch of your financial documentation and associated disclaimers and signature forms and agreements that the building has put together over the years, along with fees and credit checks and that sort of thing. Now, this process takes a little while, and once you submit it, it takes a little while for the board to approve you as well, or deny you. And if you have questions about that, put them in the comments and I'll do another video on the co-op approval process, the condo approval process, etc. But even if you're buying a townhouse, because most deals in New York tend to take a little bit longer, usually even a townhouse deal, the closing date might be 90 days or 3 months from when you have struck a deal. Now, it can happen sooner. I've seen townhouses close in as little as 45 days or even 30 days if you're really cutting it close. There are some things that still have to be done when you're buying and selling real property like a townhouse. Like you may have to do a survey, certainly have to do an appraisal, and there is a lot of due diligence to do. So it takes longer to buy in New York. Number 4, the ownership structure, which I touched on briefly earlier, may be a bit different than what you're expecting. So throughout the country, you're typically buying fee simple property. That's what they call it. And that means that you own everything. You own the house itself, you own everything inside of the house, you own the land that the house is sitting on, and you even, to some extent, own the air rights above the house and the column of land going all the way down to the center of the earth.
When you buy a piece of land, do you own that piece of land all the way down to the center of the earth? Of course, you can build on top of the land, but how far can you go down that same piece of land? What if I wanted to build something all the way down to the center of the earth? Isn't that fascinating?
Now, that's not quite true because most cities, municipalities, and states have certain mineral rights and regulations on what you can and can't do. But when you're buying real property, you really are buying the real property. And in New York City, you're usually buying something else. You're either buying a condo unit and a percentage of the common elements of the condo building in general, along with a corresponding piece of the ownership in the underlying land, or you're buying into a cooperative, which is a completely different ownership structure, where you're just buying a piece of the corporation that owns the building. And in that case, you have the right to live in a certain portion of the building, which is given to you by a proprietary lease. But you don't actually own the apartment that you have purchased. For the most part, people prefer condos, and because of that, condos trade at a premium. Condos also trade at a premium because they're typically newer than the co-op buildings, and so we see that they usually trade at, between a 30 and 50% premium in the city. And lastly, number 5, we have closing costs. So the closing costs in New York City are a little more expensive than what you might expect elsewhere in the country. There is such a thing as a mansion tax here, which is really any purchase that goes above $1 million is subject to this surcharge. And it ranges from 1% all the way up to 2.25%, depending on how big your purchase is. So at $2 million, for example, it scales up to 1.25%. At $3 million, there's an increase, and it keeps going up all the way to, I believe, $25 million. It keeps going up. So that is one closing cost that is pretty much unavoidable. Now there's also a mortgage recording tax, which is really just a tax on the amount that you have decided to mortgage. This is just over 2% for that tax, and that can really add up as well. Title insurance is pretty much the same as you might see buying a condo or a townhouse elsewhere. And if you're buying a co-op, because this form of ownership isn't real property, you actually don't have to get title insurance. So there's a savings there. And I can go into all the other closing costs in another video. If you have any other questions, or you're looking to buy in New York City and you want to book a quick buyer consultation call with me, I have a Calendly link in the pinned comments below, and I'd look forward to speaking with you at a time that works well for you. Have a nice day, and until next time.